in this auditorium. It has been 4.5 years since we have been having to, if we had programs, we had someplace else. So it's so good to have people back again, and you are most welcome. I'm going to ask Rudy Geisler to take over the program now, and he has been instrumental in putting this, the organ back together and the tech crew, and he's going to introduce the tech crew. Leave me standing here with my teeth in my mouth. Ladies and gentlemen, Rudy Geisler.
Thank you, Bill. As Bill said, it's really great to be back. A lot of things have changed. We've got new lighting. We've got a new projection system, which still has to be worked on a little bit, I understand. Eventually, we will be able to use the audiovisual equipment. You'll see the glass wall back there, and behind it, of course, there will be the sound equipment. And they've really done a lot in upgrading this. It is really their showpiece for all of their campuses. We're so happy to be able to be back. Our efforts here was really something. What? What have you got? Just a minute. Where did it come from? Somebody send me a present or something? What the heck? Excuse me, I'm curious. Anyway, tonight is a little get-together. Our formal program will be September the 16th. I'm not quite sure what the program is going to be. I think there's going to be a silent film, and we're really going to advertise. But we were so pleased to get our friend, two friends really, a 1901 grand piano that came out of the Mayo Hotel from downtown and had been restored, and our wonderful pipe organ, 1928 model. By the way, this is the second of two venues where you can enjoy theater pipe organ music. The other one, as a little brother of this fellow, this was manufactured by Robert Morton. It was the second largest manufacturer of theater pipe organs. Wurlitzer, of course, was number one. But at the Circle Cinema, which a lot of folks have attended, and if you haven't, I highly recommend it. We have films there that we put on in conjunction with the Circle Cinema the second Saturday of every month. And you'll see the little brother or sister, whichever you want to call it, of a Robert Morton. It's the smallest and least expensive that was made. Same year, ironically, it was made specifically for the Circle Theater, as it was called, in Tulsa. This organ was also manufactured in 1928. They were made in California. The Circle Cinema went directly from California to the Circle Theater. It was installed as the last pipe organ in Tulsa. Tulsa had 13 of these beautiful instruments. Pardon? Yes. Yeah. So what happened here, this went to Steubenville, Ohio, and was in the Capitol Theater there for many years. And in 1965 or thereabouts, why theaters and theater pipe organs were beginning to wane, and there was an interest for a parking lot. The theater was torn down. Fortunately, the organ was salvaged, was bought by a broker, folks that buy up organs, and it was returned to California where the brokerage was. And it stayed there for a couple of years, and eventually there was a church being formed here in Tulsa. And there was an interest for a pipe organ. It didn't say classical or didn't say theater organ, but eventually this came here. And it was installed professionally in this church. And it was about 7 years that it was in this church. The Theater Organ Society that we are a part of worked out an arrangement. If we did the maintenance on that organ, the pipe organ, we would be able to use it for programs, and also anytime they wanted theater organ type organs. So that worked out pretty well, and then the church fell on hard times. And I'm told, I was not here then, but I'm told there was a situation where the people that bought the building or the facilities came in and said, "What's that? And you got to get it out of here in 5 days." Now, disassembling one of these things is quite a task, because this is just the tip of the iceberg, as you folks will find out tonight, of an organ. It's the control center, or the cockpit of the airplane, okay? So there was a mad scramble by our chapter members. They had no place to put it, so they rented storage sheds. And in 5 days, they had disassembled the organ, properly packed it away so that the delicate parts, and there are, believe me, a lot of delicate parts in this instrument, they were saved. And it stayed there. In the meantime, VOTEC, as a lot of you people will recall this school system was called, why they came into being, and they were going to build an auditorium. And eventually it worked out an arrangement between Tulsa Tech, which we're very happy to be hosted by them. They have given us the rights to be here. We have been here since the mid-'80s. 4 years ago, there was a tremendous renovation starting in this area. You folks will recognize the changing of the color, the dyeing of the floor, and all like that. The flexibility to have this tremendous center. So the first thing I'd like to do is recognize the Tulsa Tech organization for allowing us to be here. Very important. The second thing I'd like to do is recognize a group of people that are very passionate. And as I call your name, please stand. And they are my fellow compadres in crime, and they're called a tech committee. Mr. Phil Judkins is the head of our tech committee. He has acted personally as an inventor for me as far as helping learn what this thing is and how it works and all like that. In addition, he's also been a great mentor for helping me learn the nuances of playing a theater organ. The second person I'd like to introduce, of course, is Phil Gray. He's our chapter president, and Bill has been a hard worker, sleeves, elbows, everything that it takes. And believe me, we put in some long hours. Oh, you know, one of the strangest things we found? We found that we have a resident in this building. There's a false ceiling above the stage, and this fellow resides there in the middle of the night. Maybe it's the Phantom of the Opera. But the strangest thing, each day when we get done, and the next day or when we come back to work on the organ, oh no, that's not working again? And we learned the other day, finally, the guy's name is Murphy. Does anybody have any knowledge of Murphy? You know, the little gremlin guy? Wow, we've had plenty of those. But it's been fun. So Phil has been heavily involved. The next one is Irby Barber. Irby? There you are. Great. Another gentleman that has been heavily involved, and we really appreciate his expertise. That's Gene Vickery. Gene? So a big hand for everybody that has been involved in the restoration of this organ. A pipe organ is a unique animal. It really is. It came to be that the first concept of a pipe organ, believe it or not, occurred in the year 300 BC. There was a Greek fellow playing around with water and hydraulic things, and he came up with a contraption called a hydrolysis that created music by using water, generating wind pressure, and taking that wind pressure and funneling it to some reeds, flue pipes, and sound. And from that began the history of the king of instruments. And truly, a pipe organ is the king of instruments. It's a remarkable, very complex, and it's really the largest musical instrument there is. Now, there are really, for many, many years, the history of pipe organs grew. Well, this is back before electricity was invented. You know, Ben Franklin hadn't taken his key and got shocked, or whatever happened that day with his kite and lightning. So what they had to produce, the lifeblood of a pipe organ, is wind. Not air, but wind. It is a wind or air instrument. No different than a tuba, clarinet, or what have you. What happens is that the movement of wind passing through some sort of contraption, a pipe, and how that pipe is configured, it will start to vibrate. So our program tonight is really entitled, because it's going to be a fun little program, very informal, A Box of Whistles. Oh my gosh. I wonder what's in the box. Hold your ears.
It's out of tune.
Oh, do you know how we tune these things? Now, Bill has many hats that he wears, and he does a lot of piano tuning. And the way piano tuners do, everybody see how, or know how piano is tuned? They have a wrench, they hit the key, they have their tuning fork or perfect pitch, and then they crank on these little knobs that either tightens or loosens the strings. That's the way a piano is tuned. Do you know how we tune one of these things? Does anybody know? I know. We use hammers. And how do we tune a pipe? Well, we either lengthen the pipe or shorten the pipe. Pretty simple. Oh, on some pipes we have a little reed, a little vibrating piece of copper, and we got to carefully tap that. I'll show you how this works in a little while. But we actually use these tools. Whether it's a little pipe that big, or as you'll see tonight, we have some pretty good sized pipes in that room and that room. That's where we keep the pipes locked up. That's where our box of whistles is. This really is a box of whistles, a remarkable box of whistles. And it's different than the organ that you'll find in a concert hall or that you have perhaps in your church. We are the same family, we are pipe organ, but we're a little different. And we didn't start out being called a pipe organ. We were called a unit orchestra, but there's more to that story, like Paul Harvey says. Let's see what's in this box. Somebody found out that I love trains. This is a little model of a very famous locomotive that the Pennsylvania Railroad used. And they're rebuilding one, and by 2020 or 2030, there's going to be one running. It had a very interesting shark nose. What? Well, you get the idea. Small whistle, right? Oh, gosh. We have pipes that are actually shorter than this. And you'll get to see many of these. You'll also get to hear them, and you'll get to feel them, because when these pipes speak, they speak at full volume. The way we control the volume to come out here that you and I hear as sound, noise, or music, whichever it is we have Venetian blinds called shutters. And the way we control that volume, you see these three large pedals, the two large black pedals on the left side, center and to the left, are the controls that operate those. And if we want a nice quiet sound, we close those shades and the sound can't escape. But you go in the room, that. The pipes speak at full volume. So we have a lot of pipes like this. And this is a very, very soft, delicate metal. Lead, tin, alloys. Some of your churches and concert halls will have brass pipes. A lot of that is for display. Most of them are active pipes, but there are some applications where they're just for appearance. The largest pipe organ in the state of Oklahoma is in the First United Methodist Church, the Gothic-looking building downtown. It is much larger than the concert organs over at OU. It's a very large pipe organ. Oh, we grew in size, didn't we? And notice we got wood. It's flute pipe. You'll see a lot of those when we have the tour through the chamber. Interesting thing about sound. The wind comes in here. There's a little mouth, like we talk with our mouth, and we actually use terms that are similar to the human anatomy. Anyway, this little plate in here sets up a turbulence, like the turbulence on an airplane or wind turbulence rattling a tree. And that causes the walls of the pipe, we call that the resonator, to vibrate very microscopically, but it is enough that sends out air waves or sound waves, and you and I have been created so that we hear that as some form of sound. Now, if it speaks at a certain frequency, we will recognize that. If it's kind of soothing, we'll call it music. If it's loud and boisterous, we'll probably call it noise. Now, the pipes I've shown you before are just long tubes. This one is a little different. Okay? Now, you'll notice that you have like a kitchen funnel or a gasoline funnel there. But you'll also notice there's a rod here. And this is the tuning rod. Inside this, watch this one be stubborn. In what you see there is the little reed, a little piece of brass that vibrates. And the way we change that is by pushing to shorten that amount of space on that reed that can vibrate. Or if we want to make a deeper sound, we take our little hammer, beat the snot out of this rod, but we change the length of that. On the other pipes, which goes back, this is not a reed pipe because there are two fundamental pipes in all pipe organs. This is a hollow tube. Again, like the wooden pipe, this little piece in here causes the air to become, or the wind to become agitated. And that agitation causes the pipe to vibrate. Now this pipe and I show you this because a lot of people say, God, how long did it take you to return that organ to service? We have many pipes in our organ, and each one had to be adjusted. We had to make sure that they were cleaned out. We had to make sure that all the valves that control the wind to go to these things. When the organ operates the controls, we want the wind to go specifically to a certain pipe for a certain sound. Okay, remember, if we want to make a deeper, lower pitched sound, we take our hammer, and this collar moves up and down, and it lengthens the pipe. Therefore, it produces a lower sound. For the same token, we want a higher pitch. Do that, and it shortens the length of the pipe. That's how we tune the organ in principle. Before I get off the subject of whistles, you'll notice an interesting little thing here. This pipe has a cap on it. What in the world? Is it to keep the snow out of there or the rain out of there? No. This pipe, if we want a certain size pipe, and in large organs you will have a pipe, and we measure basically the pitch, and we'll say this is a 2-foot flute pipe, you know, depending on the length of it, or it's a 4 foot, 8 foot, and you'll see some pipes in both of these chambers that can make a very, very deep sound that will vibrate the building possibly. But we don't have the space to accommodate that length of pipe. You will see some pipes that replicate a 16-foot pipe, and there's one that replicates a pipe 32 feet long. So the laws of physics say that if you put a stopper, and that is a stopper, that controls the distance, and it will always have the length of the pipe. So this particular pipe will give you a 1 foot pitch instead of a pipe that was this long. So going back to our 32-foot pipe, we have a bass note on the organ here that plays that is equivalent to a pipe 32 feet long. Well, it's only 16 feet long, and it has a stopper in it. That's rather a remarkable aspect. So, why are we here? Why all this babble about the organ? And you said that, or I said, that in the beginning they weren't called theater organs. They weren't. So the history of pipe organs started out with large assemblies, churches. And the pipes, you had the console with the keys, the pedals, and then in the beginning, because we didn't have electricity, we had a series of rods that ran from everything that you see here, the stops, the pedals, to the backside of the organ. On the backside of the organ were the pipes. And the mechanical rods and cables would actually operate where the wind went to what pipe you wanted to speak. Well, as the buildings grew, they needed more pipes to fill up the area. Cathedrals, large cathedrals require a large amount of air movement, a big organ. And it got to be very difficult. So eventually they started running a lot of cables and things like that. You can go over to the main concert organ at OU and see what is called a tracker organ. Now, what did they use for wind? Does anybody have an idea? Well, they went out to the agricultural area and they saw that fellows that put horseshoes on horses and, you know, the bellow for the forge, they got big bellows and they put them in the basement of the large cathedrals. And these bellows were very large, and they had large crews manning these bellows. Now, we're not talking about the bellows that you use to start your fire with in a fireplace. We're talking with levers like this and 2 people on a bellows pumping. Because if you have a large organ, large church, the organist is getting very enthusiastic with the amount of music and loudness that he has, you need one heck of a lot of wind. Oh, by the way, how do we measure? I said wind. How do you measure wind? We actually don't use the term pounds per square inch. You know, you fill your bicycle tire with 60 pounds, or your car tire maybe at 38 pounds per square inch. We don't do that. Back in those days, they didn't have that type of instrumentation. They weren't thinking in terms of PSIs, pounds per square inch. Inches of water pressure. Remember the old, I know I'm going to date myself, but I got a lot of gray hair so I can attest to this. Back in physics class, you had the glass tube with the mercury in it, a manometer. Well, they had the same principle in determining the amount of wind, how many inches of water you would be able to see there. All a bit of trivia. We'll have a test afterwards. Okay, so the music and the needs for the music centered from the religious aspects, the cathedrals, the large churches, so on and so forth, it grew. Eventually we got electricity, and we had motors that turned blowers. You'll see one of those later tonight in a tour. Okay, there was another thing that started out about the late 1800s, motion pictures. Hey, we can watch movies. Oh, how dull, it's silent. There's no, I just see the action, but I don't hear any word. Oh, they're trying to print the words across that. The silent film started out originally in small theaters, and there were people behind the screen with script that would try to sync in with the activity. Didn't quite work out for many reasons. It was hard to associate with what was being projected on the front side, and they didn't have PA systems, and that couldn't hear it. What do we do now? Well, let's start printing it on the screen. The next thing that came along with silent films is kind of like, we need something to draw you and I as the audience into the theme of the picture. And what do? Let's take a lesson from the saloons that were rapidly progressing as the nation began to grow westward. The Nickelodeon and the saloon piano player. Let's bring a piano player in and put it in the theater and let him or her start playing, and we'll use music to draw you into the picture. That's how we started getting music. Well, that was fine. We had a lavatorium in Bartlesville that was the first theater in Bartlesville, and they had, the funny little silent film characters running across, very crude, but it was fun and it was humorous, and they had a piano. That was the beginning. Not in Bartlesville, but throughout all of the silent films. But it was so popular as a form of entertainment that the buildings to house these and present these films began to grow. And when you take like the Coleman, that I think has about 1,600 seats in Miami, but let's take a Fox Theater like in Atlanta, where you had 5,000 to 6,000 seats. The piano just didn't quite make it, did it? What are they playing? Can't hear it. So, what's the next thing? Oh, well, let's put in an orchestra pit, and let's put in a lot of band players. That worked pretty good. Accompaniment for the silent film. Drew you in the love scenes, nice soft music, the cowboys and Indians and all the good guys and bad guys. What happens there? Well, we have drums and all that. Worked out. Pretty expensive though. And if they started changing films more than once a week, practice time, and count how many hits each production time. Along about that time in the 1880s, there was a very brilliant gentleman, Robert Hope Jones, that started out a very creative man, not a very good businessman, but a genius when it came to inventing things. And he is considered the father of the theater organ. One of the most notable things about the theater organ is the horseshoe arrangement of the stops. The classical organs have the pull-out rods. That was fine. He did several other things, but that was the beginning of the horseshoe console. Well, there was another gentleman, Robert Hope Jones, was born, raised, and had some business failings. He did create a company, the Hope Jones Organ Company in England. It failed 3 times. He then migrated to the United States. And there was another immigrant, Rudolf Wurlitzer, from Germany. Remarkable man, brilliant man, shrewd business person, but really a remarkable man, and very ingenious and always looking to build a product. Eventually he came and he got with Jones. Jones worked for a while with him, and they created a device that took the place of the piano and took the place of the orchestra. And the device, kind of like this. And what was it? Well, they sold it, and for many years, they were called unit orchestras. And the reason for the unit orchestra was one person, the organist, taking the place of a complete orchestra. Well, the motion picture industry loved it, but also there were some embellishments, because not only was it a pipe organ, but they weren't really interested in purity of sound as you would have with a pipe organ. Pipe organ is a very beautiful instrument. They were kind of willing to sacrifice a little bit in purity of sound, but they wanted the sound and the ability to make noise. things to cause you to be interested in the silent film. So, we have pipes, just like a classic organ. The pipes are similar in construction and are tuned to some degree like the classical organ. And there we have a little difference of approach. We have other things like tuned percussions, xylophone, crystallot, orchestra bells. We have chimes. Some of your classical organs will have chimes. We have the same type of chimes. We have them located in each of the 2 rooms that we keep the pipes locked up until we want you to hear all of the sound. All the pipes on a theater organ fundamentally are contained in rooms affectionately called chambers. And again, to control the volume, we open and close those things. So the unit orchestra became very popular, and Wurlitzer was the topmost manufacturer of these things. They're a marvelous device. They are a pipe organ, but they are part of the pipe organ family. They serve an entirely different purpose. A lot of people got upset for a while that, well, that's not really producing purity of sound. We can come close to emulating, but we would never wanted the theater organ to take the place. We have 2 names interchangeably. If you're from the UK or any of the some of the eastern areas, Europe and that, they call it the cinema organ because it was used for the cinemas, as they call the movies. Here in the Western Hemisphere, we have a tendency to call them theater organs. So we're going to introduce tonight the unit orchestra. When we do this, we have a unique device called a MIDI, and we have the ability, as an organist is playing, to capture all of the signals. We use electronics today. This is a wind instrument. Believe me, we generate all of our sound with wind, and you'll realize that when we go into the chambers. But anyway, what we have here, when we operate the keys or the stops or the pedals, we send electrical impulses into a control box, and then that control box determines, is it for a pipe over there, or is it for a drum over here, or what have you. Well, if we capture those electronic sounds in this MIDI device, we are able to then play back those electronic sounds so that when you hear this, this is not an LP, this is not a recording as you and I know it. It's not, you know, you are actually hearing the sound generated as though the organist were here. And we're going to share with you something. Now again, the point of this whole dialogue is I want you to close your eyes and visualize what you're hearing and what you think and how it might relate to why it's called the unit orchestra. It is a theater organ, but go ahead.
I want to make a comment concerning, you're all familiar with your stereo systems at home. Basically, they're a device that has recorded the sound on some medium, either a disc or now a CD or a thumb drive. But that is recording the sound, and then that is reproduced by a device, usually through speakers, to emulate the original sound. Okay, one difference here. Now, Rudy mentioned that it captured, the MIDI captures the electronic signals. Actually, it captures the function of the contact closure. Then when we play it back, it actually duplicates that contact closure, which then operates the pipe. So when we play the MIDI, you are actually hearing the sound that was originally produced by the organ. The only thing you don't see is the organist and the fingers. So what we're going to hear is the actual playing of a performance by Brent Valiant, who is a professional organist that has come down here and played this in one of his concerts, we were fortunate that we recorded it. So what you hear, except we will not see, Brent died.
Thank you, Bill. And again, close your eyes as the music goes on. I think you will suddenly get the illusion that you've got a pretty good sized orchestra in front of you. Listen carefully. they did in 2004 when that performance was made here. It gives you an idea as the sound that we can create. Now we're going to have the opportunity to hear some of our chapter organists and pianists play. The first I'd like to introduce is our chapter president. Many of you know him. Many of you know him for several skill sets he has. He is a house, not the house organist, but he plays the silent films for most of them at the Circle Cinema that I mentioned every second Saturday. Playing the silent film requires 17 unique things. You have to know music, whether you play by ear, sight read, combination thereof, what have you. You have to know the instrument, what it's capable of doing, to get all the sound effects, because in silent film accompaniment, we want the music as well as sound effects. And you'll hear some of those sound effects tonight, as you've done in this bit of a playback. And then many other things. But the most important thing is being able to keep your hands on the keys, feet on the pedals, and watch the film and be in perfect sync. Not 1 second forward or backward. Because if you do, you know, it'd be terrible, a beautiful lush out scene going on, and you've got the sound effects of the cowboys, cowgirls, and the robbers, and what have you going through the town with the sand blocks going on the organ, creating that cobblestone effect of the horse's hooves. Or the reverse, where you have the trains speeding down the track and the ladies chained to the rails, and you know, is it the villain's going to win or is it going to be the good guys, whatever, and you're just a couple of seconds away from that. Playing accompaniment for silent films is truly a unique thing, and Bill certainly has a great history of doing it. Bill, what are you going to do tonight, Bill? By the way, he's known by another name. Mr. Ragtime, if you look at his license plate.
Thank you, Rudy. I'm going to play a tune on the piano and the organ. Now, we haven't talked about piano here. This piano was a gift to the chapter from Don Miller. And this piano was originally used at the Mayo Hotel in downtown Tulsa for many years, and Don has rebuilt it. It was built in 1901. At first we thought it was built in 1903, but I looked up the serial number the other day, and it's over 120 years old. And I would like to play one tune on it, just to show you what a 120-year-old piano sounds like. And this will be an arrangement of Claude Debussy's Clair de Lune. organ. This is called That's Entertainment, because that's what the box of whistles was designed to do. It was designed to entertain you. And Rudy mentioned that it was built to replace a whole orchestra with one player. And so this is the only musical instrument I ever know that actually put musicians out of work. So here's That's Entertainment.
Very much, Bill. And with that, we'd like to have a gentleman that has been part and is really instrumental for the formation of this Sioux Interstate chapter of the American Theater Organ Society. He is the longest member of the organization, Mr. Phil Jenkins.
What a pleasure with this fine instrument again in all its glory. I'm going to play a couple of numbers. I think you'll recognize both of them. One of them is from the opera, and the other one is from Australia, called, what is the name of that? Waltz and Matilda. So we'll start out with Waltz and Matilda.
Thank you, Mr. Bill Fletcher. Okay, next up, we're going to have a special treat. We're very fortunate to have this gentleman with us tonight because he represents the future. He represents folks that we are trying to have them become more and more familiar and realize this is the original boom box. This is the original stereo system. I'm not joking when you stop and think of what this wonderful machine can produce. He started out with piano lessons, and then through Phil's church, they had a surplus Baldwin Spinet, and that became his first organ that he began to work on. And he has a tremendous thirst about organs, an extreme thirst about the unit orchestra. It's amazing the things that he knows at his age. Very recently, through the efforts of Carolyn Kraft, there was the availability of an older Wurlitzer 2-manual console organ. And arrangements were made, and he now has that. He's had it for perhaps about 3, maybe 4 weeks. He's been working diligently on it. He's very ardent in his school's band performance. This will be his first presentation. He's been on this organ just to get used to the feel of it when we were still in operation over 4.5 years ago. Bear with him. It's remarkable what he's done. As you can appreciate, the beauty of the organ, classical or theater organ, or unit organ, is the versatility, just like an artist with a beautiful palette of multiple colors and being able to select. Indeed, the beauty of the pipe organ, either one, gives you this versatility so that when you hold a key down, you can play many, many musical notes. And it's just amazing. It can be overwhelming when you first look at it and begin to work on it. But it's truly an amazing thing to learn. And he has been rapidly picking it up. And the other day when he was practicing here for the first time, as we were getting the organ prepared for this performance, why, I was amazed at how he approached his registration. He's going to share that. Logan Davis, please come up. Big hand for him. He represents what we're a graying group. He doesn't have the gray hair yet. He has many years, and I think he's going to be a wonderful organist as he grows on. Okay? Thank you. What are you going to play?
So tonight I'm going to play Boone River. It actually came with the organ when I received it. And I'll just say, after taking 12 years of piano lessons, it's a little different than getting on a big organ that's got 3 keyboards and a fiddle board. So, thank you.
Good luck, sir. Next up on the itinerary, we have Joyce Hatchett, and she has some songs for us. Whilst Joyce is coming up here, I'd like to point something out that you may or may not have noticed, but watch for the remaining organist. As Logan was playing, every so often you would see maybe one of his fingers or thumb drop down to these rows of red buttons. He was working off the top manual. We call these manuals instead of keyboards. And those are pistons. Those are ways that we can pre-program the stops so we don't have to individually turn the stops on. We can set up on all manuals or just one or two or something like that. Joyce, what are you going to be playing tonight for us?
I'm going to play Smoke Gets in Your Eyes, Londonderry Air.
Very good. Two beautiful songs. Joyce? This is a 1928 model. We don't have a thick belt. What she's doing, we have 124 memory locations that we can put our registrations in. And you'll see that little indicator over here, those that can see the screen, and that's what she's in the process of selecting her memory location. Logan was at number 90. I have 116. And anyway, ready? Oh, I'm sorry, she's on number 2, so she had a little distance to go. It doesn't move too quickly. We put the quarter in the slot and it still doesn't respond. have Carolyn Kraft. Carolyn, what are you going to play tonight?
Well, I've got several here. First one, an old one from 1931. Wrap your troubles in dreams and dream your troubles away. Then I want to do a medley. Starts out with Honey Bun from South Pacific. And then I go into You Must Have Been a Beautiful Baby. And then You Ought to Be in Pictures. And then Yes Sir, That's My Baby. These are all 1925, 1934, 1938, and the Honey Bun, South Pacific, was 1949. And then, if I can remember, that's the problem at my age, is hoping that your memory will hold up when you get started. I want to end with medley, Them Their Eyes, and Paddlin', Madeline Home. Oh, and I'm going to use something they have not mentioned tonight. This organ has a transposer on it, so I can change keys with just the push of a button, and I'll learn to use that.
Okay, we're going to have an interesting opportunity next. We're going to have a unique opportunity to actually take a look at the box of whistles. In fact, you're going to get to see two boxes of whistles. the south box of whistles and the north box of whistles. That's kind of crude to call them whistles, but it isn't remarkable the sound that the unit orchestra can create. It's only up to the imagination and talent of the organist. It provides limitless musical sound or noise or any sound, okay? But it is the original, remarkable musical instrument. I'm always in awe of it and those that play it. So tonight we're going to have a tour. We're going to break into two groups. One group will head over there and they will come back through the backstage area and go see what creates the wind. And by the way, the thing that creates the wind is a big industrial blower. You probably have gone to a drive-up window, trusted the bank in the little pneumatic tube system and put your money or what have you in there, and the tube went up and over. Well, that big industrial blower is the same thing that we use. We don't have a bunch of floats in the basement. There was no basement, so we couldn't put them down there. You know, pumping those big blacksmith bellows to provide the wind. So we have a large 10 horsepower blower. It just sits there and pumps out all kinds of wind that comes here. The wind goes from the blower, splits into two lines, one going over there and one going over there. Each one, we run on 15 inches of water pressure. Some of the pipes take less. Pipe organs, theater or classical, vary in the amounts. Some instruments, classical instruments, will take some very, very high pressures, getting up in the neighborhood of 50 to 60 inches of water. Pretty substantial. But it is remarkable what happens. Now, so you have the full effect of the fact that we do not control the volume like you do on a radio or on a piano if you want louder, because that's a percussion instrument. We come down a little harder or more forceful on the keys. We can come down with a hammer. I wouldn't want to do it, but when you could hit the organ keys, I'm sorry, it's not going to play any louder because we lock the sound up, remember, in the rooms. So when you go into the rooms, and we will be playing another selection from MIDI so that you will actually experience the loud noise. You'll be amazed, okay? It's deafening. Don't be alarmed at that. Phil, I guess you're going to take the south chamber, and Irby, you're going to take the north chamber. We couldn't get any Gray Line sightseeing hats. They're all village tours or something like that in this area. I haven't seen a Gray Line bus. No, I'm teasing. But it's without hats. So anyway, we're going to be playing the MIDI. Half the group, right down the center, goes that way. Half the group goes that way. And each one will explain what you're going to be seeing.
Please use the microphone.
Pardon?
Please use the microphone.
Yeah. We have ramps going around, and the ramp would just walk out there, and then you will come on the backside and see the concrete ramp really behind the curtains. That way we don't have to contend with the stairs, and we've got some cords strung up. Good luck. Be prepared for an interesting experience. Still having fun with the box of whistles? Okay, let's go for it.
I've told several people.